Hi everyone, and welcome to The Girls. We are here at my house and we are joined with two very special guests. I should say three. Rosie's with us too, right?
Yeah, and I'm not special because I'm part of The Girls.
You're part of the panel. We have Amy and Danielle McGeehin with us, and thank you guys for coming. Daniel's the star of our show today, right?
Yes.
Yes, he is. He's very proud, and we're so happy that you're able to come on and talk about leukemia is our topic today. Most common form of leukemia is what Daniel had.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So Mom's going to fill us in on his story and bring light to leukemia and the types of leukemia and how Daniel's doing today. So thanks, Amy, for
I have
being
a big question for you because people have children and they're always wondering, is it something? Isn't it something?
Yeah,
and
am I overreacting?
Yeah, and so with all of the things that are happening today, with all the strange diseases and things that we have as well, please tell us, how did you first know that Daniel had something? How did you know to keep looking? Like, what were the signs? Because everybody else wants to know, what's the sign? What's the sign? So everybody's different.
And there are several. And I've had, like, over the years, so many of my friends have asked me, like, what were the symptoms? Like, what did he have? What was going on? And I'm always happy to describe it, just because if there's ever a question for another parent down the road, it's never just one symptom. So he was, and this went on for like maybe 2 weeks or so.
Well, how old was he when it first started?
5.
He was 5 years old.
He was 5. So this was towards the end of 2016. He was having a little bit of nausea off and on. He was very pale, a little bit lethargic, not a lot of energy. He was having weird, crazy up and down fevers. He was having horrible night sweats. When he was having a fever and I would go in at night before bed and go check on him, he would be like soaked through his pajamas. Those I'd say were the main ones.
Are those the things that had you call the doctor, or what were you told?
Yeah, so I called the doctor, and our family doctor was out of the country, and so we saw like her fill-in doctor, and kind of didn't really do much investigating on him, based on the symptoms that I explained. She kind of attributed it to like a stomach bug, and I had kind of said, well, it's been like some days, and typically with a stomach bug, we don't get a fever, and just like your child and when they have a stomach bug, what it's like, and this wasn't like that. But, we went home and gave it a couple more days, and things persisted, and he wasn't getting better. And then the paleness was definitely a factor at how much color he had lost, and it was just the indication of the blood, like his blood count was drastically low.
Did they do blood work?
So a couple days went by, then our doctor came back, and I called when I knew she was back, and she saw him right away. And then did she do like a full physical examination? So his liver and his pancreas were both inflamed. So they were swollen, and when she noted the liver size and just how long things had been going on and that he wasn't getting better, this is probably, like I said, maybe about 2 weeks, we went that day from her office up to get blood work done.
And were you a nervous wreck? Or were you like, I would have been, I'm like, I'd rather be an overreactor than an underreactor when your kid's sick, because you never know that it could be something. And then you hear that, and I mean, I don't have a medical background, so I would be a little concerned about that.
I mean, kind of. And he had never had blood work done before. He had had shots and immunizations before, but like the thought of a 5-year-old and how am I going to get them to take blood from him, like that was my initial problem. Like, how are we going to get through the blood work, let alone what the blood work is actually going to say?
Sure.
It was the stress of, the 5-year-old needing all this blood work done. So we actually, doctor called us around 4:30 that day, and she said, you need to come into my office like right away. So I went, this was December 6th of 2016, and she didn't tell me, she knew, but she didn't tell me. She just said, you guys need to go home and pack your bags, and you need to go today. And she said, you can either go to Hershey or to CHOP in Philadelphia, or you can go to Geisinger Danville, because it's the same protocol for a kid with leukemia, no matter where you go in the world.
So you didn't know at this time yet?
No.
Okay.
So we got to Geisinger Danville as the hospital we chose, and not for any particular reason. She had, made it clear that any of them would be fine. So we got there, and they were waiting for us, and they did more blood work there, and then we had a diagnosis by like around 10 o'clock that night.
What exactly then was he diagnosed with?
So it's ALL, so it's acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the most common type of leukemia in children, and the most treatable. So the cure rate for ALL is anywhere between 85 and 95%. So
I have a question for Daniel.
Yes?
You're now 11. Do you remember any of this, honey? Any of that happening when you first went to the doctor? Remember you having the blood work done?
No, but I do remember the first night in the hospital.
How was that?
Rough.
Yeah.
Were you by yourself, or was your mom allowed to stay with you?
Mom was allowed to stay with me.
That was comforting, huh?
Yeah.
Mom and Dad. And I mean, we were greeted by, there was med students and various doctors. And so he had a room full for many hours. It's like lots of questions. And did you remember that?
Do you remember any of that, honey?
Yes, I remember the first night.
Yeah.
How did you feel?
Confused.
Confused, yeah. But we were glad Mom and Dad were there, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember feeling really sick?
Yeah.
Did you?
So from the process of knowing that he had the leukemia, then what was the process of really taking it all in and then learning what steps were next for his case?
Well, I mean, luckily, the staff, and I can't say enough about the doctors and nurses out there, because it was pretty much all laid out for us.
Like protocol, right.
Like, this is what we do day 1, this is what we do day 2, and these are the chemos that you'll have in this phase. So the treatment is based on several different phases, and each phase, one could last a month, one could last 2 months, one could last, there's maybe 5 different phases of chemo, and they all, different chemos in different phases. So some were, he had a Metaport. The second day we were in the hospital, they actually did a bone marrow biopsy. That's how they tell the kind of leukemia it is. So since he was under, they did the biopsy and insert his Metaport at the same time.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So now all this is going on, and I can't imagine we have children the same age. So you have an older daughter, and now you have your son, who, your daughter was what, 7 at the time?
She was in first grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she
They
was,
were
she was 6 turning 7.
Right, she was turning 7. You have a 5-year-old now, you have work, you have, so how did you, that's always like you have all these things, you have stuff going on at home, but you also have your son who's in the hospital. How do you handle all that?
Right, and actually both my husband and I went to the hospital with him the initial day, and he was actually inpatient for 2 weeks. So we lived at the hospital for 2 weeks. So initially we kind of shuffled Jillian to a friend's house for a couple of nights, and then my mom flew in from Kentucky.
Wow.
And she stayed with Jillian while we stayed at the hospital with him. So we were fortunate that she could come and help out with Jillian.
So when you mentioned that when you first got there that the team was waiting and that they had a protocol and everything ready for you, how reassuring was that, at least, to have doctors know what they were treating and that they've treated children before?
I really couldn't tell you because
It's a blur.
Were you in a coma?
Well, that wasn't even in our radar. Like I said, we didn't have an answer, like a diagnosis, till around 10:30 that night. And and it's funny, when they took us in, he was on the 3rd floor, and it says hematology oncology, but like you're walking out of the elevator down the hall and you see the sign, but it totally didn't register at all. And then as the days went on, we were like, it was clicking and it was registering, but it was, we had a doctor sit with us from probably the same doctor who told us the diagnosis, basically sat with my husband and I for at least an hour in just a room with the 3 of us and just said, hey, it's going to be okay. And this is what we're going to do. And you're going to get through it. And he's going to get through it. And he's going to be fine. So, hearing that was good. Hearing the cure rate is really good.
That's what I was referring to, like all of the advice that he had given you and all of the numbers and everything. That had to give you something to hang on to.
It did. But leukemia is tricky, as we were talking a little bit before going on about leukemia not necessarily being genetic. It doesn't. There's no rhyme or reason of It was just like a fluky kind of thing.
Those cells have a mind of their own.
Yeah.
So he started treatment then in the hospital, and then he was there for 2 weeks. And then what happened after that? Did he continue to have different treatments?
Oh, yeah. So his total treatment time was over 3.5 years.
Yeah. We're going to touch on that. We're going to take a quick break, and Daniel's going to have the show when we come back. You're watching The Girls here on SSP TV. Welcome back. You're watching The Girls here on SSP TV. You can watch us locally on cable, and also you can check us out on our YouTube channel. We're here with Amy and Daniel McGeehin. They are with us to talk about Daniel because he had the most common form of leukemia in children, correct?
Yes.
ALL.
ALL.
And we're here talking about it because not a lot of people know about leukemia and all of the different types of leukemia that there are. And we heard Mom's version of the story. Now we're going to hear Daniel's because he's the man. He's the main man. He's the one who went through this. So, Daniel, how was it for you on December 6th of 2016? Okay.
Well, on December 6th, 2016, I remember my mom saying, "Come on, we gotta go." And I was just like, where? I like it here. Excuse me?
You're home.
And so they took me in the car, and by the time we got to the hospital, I was fast asleep.
Yeah, it was evening. It was dark out.
Yeah, dark out. And we went into the hospital, and the next thing I know, there are a bunch of people like giving me blood pressure, checking my temperature, and monitoring my heartbeat.
What was going on in your mind? Thinking, what's going on? You were just trusting your parents?
Yeah, I was trusting them.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was a 5-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, you remember all this at 5 and now you're 11. So all these things that you were going through that not many children, maybe your friends were going through, was that hard to deal with? Confusing?
Yeah, a little bit.
But they cheered you up because they would come together and rally, Mom, right? All the friends would...
Yeah, so he was pulled from preschool. So this was preschool, and it was, end of November. So school was only in for a couple months.
Yeah.
And then he missed the whole rest of the year
Wow.
of preschool. So so you want to talk about
Facebook Fridays, come on now.
FaceTime?
Let's hear about it.
Every Friday, me and we'd managed to do like a FaceTime from school.
With you at home.
Yeah, when I was like at home with Mom, and so I got to see everyone every Friday, so that cheered me up a lot.
How did your daughter handle it?
I think initially, well, we didn't want to tell her over the phone. So we had a diagnosis that night, 10, 11 o'clock at night. She didn't know what was going on. So we wanted her to be brought out to the hospital either the next day or maybe it was 2 days after that. I can't remember. And the hospital provided us with a child life specialist.
Nice.
So that's their expertise in
great.
talking to siblings, family members, explaining things so that not to scare her too much, not to upset her, because here we are, like now we're a family apart for some time, and you know, that was stressful enough on her, and then the not knowing what's going on with my brother, and so we wanted to do it in person, so we had her come out to the hospital.
Well, you hear cancer and you get, you know, I mean, it's cancer. Leukemia is cancer.
Right, right, yeah. And also, something to think about was you don't want then her to think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get it.
Right.
And so that was very important that the percentage chance of her getting was very slim. So we, you know, wanted to express that to her and make her comfortable. And so.
All right.
You know, you're juggling a lot of different things at that time.
Yeah, you're in the hospital, and he had his treatments, and you said how long were the first round of treatments that he had to have?
Well, the first phase was 30 days. So it took us till about January 4th or 5th of 2017. They repeated a bone marrow biopsy on him, and that actually was sent, it gets sent to Maryland, so it takes a couple of days. And depending on the results of that, he's either put into remission and moving on to phase 2 of treatment, or your plan B, trying to figure out either you're repeating phase 1 or you're adding some other chemos to really try to knock it out. But he went into remission when they expected him to.
Was he in the hospital this whole time?
No, he was in the hospital. He got home a few days before Christmas.
I was just going to say, how was that first Christmas?
Yeah, it was very good to go home. December 6th, we were there. I think we went home around December 21st. Somewhere around, a couple days before Christmas.
I bet you were glad to get in your own bed.
Yeah.
And don't you miss your
Just
bed?
in your own house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then I want to hear about, when did you get to ring this bell? Because that's the most important part, right? That's exciting.
Wow, that was
Right?
after how much treatment? So how much longer then?
So it's like 5 phases, took about a hair over 3.5 years. They treat boys a little bit longer than girls.
Really?
Yes, with leukemia.
Okay, so when you go in remission, it's not like, oh, we're done.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That was the end of phase 1.
Okay.
So yeah, just because he was in remission doesn't mean, we stopped chemo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was 3.5 years of, some were every day, some were once a week, some were once a month.
Did he lose his hair?
He did. He lost all his hair his hair started coming back when he started kindergarten. So yeah, about no hair for about 9 months.
What was that like, not having to shampoo your hair? Slick.
Yeah, I remember Mom saying we have to put a lot of sunscreen on it during the summer. One of the side effects to steroids made me really hungry.
Oh.
So with leukemia, and steroids are not considered a chemo, but steroids were a regular part of his treatment.
Keep the inflammation down.
High dose steroids. So he blew up like a balloon. And steroids really were one thing that he had all the way through, just not as it was tapered. So the steroids was very surprising to us. Or what do you mean you treat leukemia with steroids? It was one of the drugs.
So you get through this process of, what was it, 3.5 years? How do you know when are you done? When was he done? Where it was like, okay.
I can breathe now.
We're not there yet.
Oh, really?
Well, so now he gets blood work every 3 months. At the end of treatment, when he rings the bell, we go every month.
Okay.
Blood work, just monitor checkup, and then we do that for a year, and then we went to every 2 months. Now we're at every 3 months for blood work and going out to Danville and getting checked. And so they will follow him and monitor him until he hits 10 years. He would be deemed cured. But as long as he remains in remission, and they don't anticipate at this point, because he's so far removed from it with no relapses, that his numbers are really, really good.
High five. That's awesome.
So when was the last checkup?
Today.
Yeah,
Today was the last checkup. So you're fresh back from a checkup, and did you have results today?
Yeah,
Or
well,
what?
we went for labs yesterday, and they reviewed everything today when we were there, and they check his liver and spleen, and they check just like a regular checkup with your doctor. Ask questions, ask about, is he doing everything he's supposed to be doing in school and physical activity, and his hands and feet are better, they're stronger. It's amazing. Some effects last a long
Sure, those
time.
drugs are powerful, right?
Yeah. So, people always assume, oh, you're done.
Yeah.
Then,
You're never done, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Until-
you feel great, but it takes a long time, depending on the drug.
Is there we have about 1 minute left in the show. Is there anything proactively, I mean, you do shows like this, but is there anything that you do aside for, trying to get that word out, or is it just by word of mouth?
It's just, really
Constant.
as a parent, if you think something's wrong with your kid and it's not like a normal cold or not something they've normally had, or things are just out of the ordinary and something's wrong, even if one doctor tells you, oh, everything's fine, or it's just this or this, and you go home and your child is still not getting better, and in your gut,
That something's wrong.
yeah.
Get it checked. Be persistent.
Yeah, because, kids don't know. They can't be, you have to advocate for your kids, and you have to be aggressive and assertive when you need to. So I'm definitely glad that I pushed.
We're happy that you're feeling healthy and you look great and you're back in school and back to normal, right, Mom?
And he has a full head of hair. Beautiful
Yeah,
setting.
yeah.
I do have one comment. I remember on April 6th of 2020, we had a big parade right outside of my house.
Yep.
Because of the pandemic.
Oh.
And everyone was holding up signs, and the fire truck and the police trucks came.
We're just so happy today that we're here on a happy note.
Yeah.
To be able to see you, and that we're going to keep lifting
Praying
you up and
for you.
hoping that you're going to continue on, so that our next show we could say, well, we're 5 years
When
into
you're
this
15, we'll have you back on when that's the remission day, right? That's when you're
Cured.
Cured.
Yeah, cured.
You're 15.
So thanks for coming on, Amy. Thank you for making the time. I know it was a long day for Daniel with the appointment and stuff too, but hey, it was worked out good. What do you think, Rose? Are we
She's
done?
hungry.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, well, you had a
Thank
good
you
time.
so much. We're going to keep tabs on you. Well, another great show here on The Girls. I hope that you have learned something, and if you could pass the information along to your friends, you could watch us here on Channel 13 or catch us on YouTube at ssptv.com. And we always tell you, have a great day. See you next time.